Mhm.
Brian was like, because we needed to trust ourselves, just like what we talked about.
Yeah, just like what we were talking about, the advice we were giving to for others about 3 or 4 minutes ago. Like, oh, wait a minute. Duh. Let's take it for ourselves. And we have these moments. I have these moments all the time when I'm coaching.
Me too. Hello, ADHD reWired listeners. Can you believe that it's already 2024? I can't, but here we are. So from all of us here at ADHD reWired, we want to wish you a very, very happy new year. That means the first coaching season of the year, our upcoming winter season of coaching and accountability groups, starts right away next week on January 11th. Still on the fence? Not sure what group coaching can do for you? Want to know our coaches a little more? Well, today's a great day to listen in then and get pumped because we are trying something new. Woohoo! In today's episode, we're having a coaches roundtable with Coach Kristin and Coach Brian and myself. So don't wait. The time is now. Whether it's now or maybe after you listen to this episode, set yourself a reminder to go to coachingrewired.com to get your name added to our winter interest list so you can join us for our next registration event tomorrow on Wednesday, January 3rd at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 Eastern. Seriously though, if you are looking for a sign that it's time to put yourself first, that you can do hard things and that you don't have to do them alone, then let your journey start here. That's at coachingrewired.com to get your name added to our winter interest list so you can join us for our upcoming registration event tomorrow on Wednesday, January 3rd at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 Eastern. And now on with today's show with our Coaches Roundtable. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD reWired. We are doing something different today. We are actually launching a new series that we're going to be calling the Coaches Roundtable. So I have joining me today, Coach Brian Entler and Coach Kristin Marts. Hello, Brian. Hello, Kristin.
Hi, Eric.
Hi.
Hello, hello. So as we were kind of talking about what this is going to be and how is this going to be different from our live Q&As and from other episodes, a couple things and why we want to do this is, one, we want you as listeners to get a better opportunity to understand who we are, both personally and as coaches, and also to share kind of under the hood a little bit of what happens in our coaching program. Because, we will talk about it and mention it here and there, and maybe talk about it in the abstract, but I also sense that there's a lot of listeners right now who hear us talk about the coaching. They maybe hear the coaching group ads and don't really know. So what we want to do is have this sort of roundtable conversation. And I think we're going to let this evolve somewhat organically. So this is just the coaches. So let's kind of introduce Brian and Kristin. And if either of you want to also turn the mic on me and ask me any questions about me, feel free. So this is unscripted. Let's just be honest, it's just unplanned. But we are here. So let's see.
I prefer to reframe that as spontaneous.
I love it. So, right, let's start with you, since you are also a master reframer. Share a little bit about how you got involved in coaching.
Well, I feel like I've had kind of a charmed life. I started off with ADHD reWired coaching as a coaching member, someone who signed up for season 22 back in 2020 after COVID hit, and I realized my old survival tactics, my own adaptations, my old masking techniques weren't working in the COVID world. And I said, I need something to get me back on track. And I knew it had ADHD for a long time, but wasn't really actively working on managing it. So I was looking for resources and I came across the podcast, and I had an aha moment listening to one of your podcasts, specifically Eric, about transition times at the end of the day, leaving the office when you actually want to. And I was like, what? That's an ADHD thing? Maybe I should pay a little bit more attention. So then I ended up signing up for the group coaching program. I went through the 10 weeks and it was a amazing experience. Kind of, I felt like on a runaway train of insights and ahas and experiences. And then afterwards, I realized, I was a great start, but I need to stick with this. I need this in my One thing I did learn well, not the one thing, but one of the many things I learned in the coaching program is that, yeah, I need structure and support to keep me on track. And it's up to me to build that structure and support. So I stayed with our alumni community, did a lot of work. I admin, which is an admin is one of our peer coach mentors, people who have gone through the 10-week program but have come back to volunteer to be a peer mentor and support the coach and the administrative functions, but also be there as a peer advocate to help coachees work through whatever issues they're working with the program, as kind of a sympathetic ear or somebody who has the shared experience of having been through the course, because the course can be challenging at times. So I did that 4 times. And I started, let's see, I did your section twice, Eric. And then I recommended Kristin to become an admin. And then she became a coach. Then I became her admin. Then I became a coach. So I have really stuck with it, and I've leveraged all these tools, and I've really just kept progressing on my journey, my ADHD journey, while I'm also kind of transitioning to being a coaching. And I started my own programming on the alumni network, my session GPA, which is still running 2 years later, still very well attended. And I still enjoy doing it. And I'm actually branching out. Someone else took me up on my offer to possibly become a peer facilitator for another section, finally.
Awesome.
So I'm working on that this week. One of our alumni stepped up and said, I want to run a GPA section on another day and another time so more people can attend. So doing great with that. And then when an opening became available in the ADHD reWired program, I was honored that people said, hey, Brian's already been here. Brian's been doing the work. And how I phrase it now is I was getting on the job training before I knew I was ever going to get the job. And I've just rolled into it, and I'm just about wrapping up week 9 of my 3rd season. And it's really been a great experience. I find it very gratifying work.
What's and for listeners, about a year ago, we had sort of an unexpected turnover in our coaches. We had one of our coaches leave right before we started one of our seasons, and so we had this kind of like, oh shit moment. So we called a last minute sort of emergency Sunday night meeting, which I've done once ever. That's not something I would typically do. And so I don't remember how many people we had on this call. There'd be 6 or 7 people from the team. And I asked people to throw out names of who we think we might be able to get in there, and it was unanimous. It was Brian Entler, because people have seen how you facilitate the coaching groups or the GPA group. And then when I observed some of your coaching, I was like, he's got the chops. So that's been really kind of cool, because your background isn't in coaching.
No, not yet. Well, not before that point.
But you are pursuing that now, I know.
Oh, absolutely. I'm working on my certification. That's one of my, and we're in the annual planning phase of our current season of ADHD reWired. And I'm also going through my annual planning process, as yours that you do every season. Yeah. And that's my big goal for next year. Or one of my top goals that I've set.
And what is your background?
Well, do you mean culturally or educationally?
Education, yeah. Education work.
Well,
yeah.
I actually come from a business background. When I was my undergrad degree, I have a Bachelor of Science in Resource Economics, which is the field of using economic theory and quantitative analysis to solve specific resource management problems. Oh, I know, it just rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it? But I actually really loved it. It was really more focusing on critical thinking skills and using investigation and using analysis and using information to analyze things. And these are skills that have served me well in every career that I've had. And as an ADHD person, one of my traits is I tend to go from career to career to career. I've had several lifetimes of experience in different things, and those skills have served me very, very well at all of them. And I think it definitely translates to my coaching.
Awesome. All right, let's shift over to Kristin Marts. So, Kristin, tell us your kind of ADHD reWired journey, how you got from where you started to where you are today.
All right. So if you don't know this, I am from Little Rock, Arkansas, and I'm a clinical mental health therapist, LCSW. And I got diagnosed with my ADHD at age 44. My world sort of fell apart. I didn't know what was going on. Once I became a therapist, I was in the arts world for forever. I went back to school and got this degree and became a therapist and started having problems with bosses. I wasn't turning things in on time. And I was like, what the hell's wrong with me? And I'm sitting here treating kids with ADHD, which, as we now understand, looks very different for adults because we're good at masking, as Brian had shared. It's the funny part is one of the colleagues, we were there doing our notes on a Friday at the main office, and I couldn't stop talking. I kept stop doing, and she was like, Kristin, will you just take your pill? And I went, what? Huh? And she goes, huh? And we were good enough friends that it was okay. And she goes, don't you have ADHD? I went, I do. So that made me start thinking about it. I pretty soon after that lost that job, went to a next job, and met a new colleague who was listening to Eric's podcast. And she came to me and she said, oh my God, Kristin, you've got to hear this. Go listen to this. This guy talks about this one thing question. And so I even, we go into the office, we're doing our sessions, we have a lunch break. I go in there, she starts sharing it with me. I start listening to the podcast. I also, Brian, tuned in immediately about transition stuff. The episode I'm thinking of is when you shared, it actually takes me this many minutes when I say I'm ready to go to actually get in my car and be backing out of the driveway. And I was like, oh, maybe that's why I'm always late. Because when I say I'm ready to go, it's the time I need to go. And so I started timing myself and started listening to the show. I was already in therapy, so I was cleaning up some family of origin kind of trauma stuff. And because I understood from the show, coaching is forward progress. And I was like, I need some of that. I love that I do therapy and then I'm processing, but I'm still not getting anywhere. My house is still a mess. I'm still late. I still can't seem to get the notes, activated to do the notes, because what I've learned is I was transitioning from doing the work to doing the written work. And that's really hard. So COVID hit. I did a bunch of play therapy trainings and I was really loving it. And I was actually one of those therapists who liked doing the telehealth with my kids. So I was having a great time. I was getting a lot of social interaction, and I ran out of play therapy trainings, and I knew I wanted to do this program, your program. So I go to my husband and I go, my birthday's coming up. Can I have it for my birthday? And he was like, what? If you think it's going to help you, you can do it. And I jokingly said at the orientation, hey, I'm Kristin from Little Rock. I want to be Eric when I grow up. Not really be Eric, but I love the idea that in coaching, I get to hear the outcomes. I get to hear how people are doing. We don't often get that as therapists. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful branch of my tree of the work I do. I still do the therapy, but I get my adult fix because I work with adults with the coaching. So I did the program in 2021 of the spring, and I had an ACL tear, had surgery, just retreated from the whole program, wasn't getting on. I was in every event before that. I wasn't doing anything. Brian, as he said, was my admin. He reached out to me just at the exact magical time, and he was like, don't you want to be an admin? You told me you wanted to be an admin. I was like, yeah. Brian, I can't tell you how much you pulled me back out of that and pulled me back in the community. And that was amazing. And so then I admin for a couple seasons, Eric had a conversation saying, I know you want to be a coach. Do you want to, be an admin this season and be looking at it and training for it? I was like, yes, I think it would be awesome. 4 days later, he calls me and saying, we're having a coaching turnover. Can you start in 4 days? And I was like, that's like music to my ADHD ears. I love a good crisis. And so I jumped in there, and it was I felt really intensely learning and experiencing, and it's been awesome. And I keep learning so much about me. I just bought this bag at the Chad Conference gift shop. I like who I'm becoming. That's just what it feels like. It feels like now, yes, I have ADHD. I can't change that. But the more I learn about it, the more I realize it's part of who I am, and that's who I want to be. So I want to work with it. And so, yeah, I feel like I'm becoming more me than I've ever been.
I love that.
Oh, yeah. Now I'll follow up. And by the way, Kristin, we have to compare notes. If we're talking about the same podcast episode about transitions that sparked both of our interests, that would be a little mind blowing. I'm not sure.
I don't know if it's the exact same one. I know that what triggered in my memory was the part about getting from the house out to the car. My family would go, "Are you ready to go to the movies?" "Yeah, I'm ready." And they're like, "Kristin, come on. You said you were ready." They all start walking out to the car. I'm still in the house. I don't know. I will have to look that up and see if it is the same one, because that would be really interesting.
Yeah, and I would just like to add to kind of vibe off of Kristin's framing at the end about how you like what you're becoming. I've kind of been on a journey of my own professional growth, my not professional, personal growth and development. Like I've been doing a lot of therapy over the last few years, and I worked a lot to become more trauma informed and learn about somatic therapies for my own benefit. And I brought that to my coaching, and it's synergistically combining. Like it's really propelled me further, and it's really enhanced my coaching. So like, yeah, it really is. It's reciprocal. The coach, it's not like a one way where a college class where a professor comes in and is instructing, is disseminating knowledge in one specific way to do something. It is reciprocal. Like we are personally invested in the coaching to a degree with some professional detachment, but it really moves me along my journey as well. So that's one reason why I really enjoy it.
I really think that's because the community piece. We keep learning off each other, don't you all?
Oh, absolutely.
Me too.
I learn something every single time.
Me too.
I learn some things from every single one of the coachees every single time.
And when I get to have conversations with each of you and occasionally watch some of your recordings, like there's things that I learned by watching you. It's really fun to be able to see, all right, so here's this thing I created, and now they're sort of taking it and adding each of their own flavors to it, which is wonderful. Because I know one of the for me, one of the really important things is that you also are bringing your own energy and your own personality to the group coaching experience. Because what I don't want is people to be clones of me, because it's like I'm enough as it is, I think, and I want you to do you.
And Eric, I think we say this a lot with a wink and a nod and a little chuckle, is that you're the only one who's not gone through the program.
It's true.
Because you created it.
And I often think about this, that, we're coming into the 10th year of doing this coaching program, going into the 35th season. We've had 1,200 about people go through this program. And the thing that I'm honestly surprised about is that I'm not bored yet. I remember the first couple of years, I was like, I love what I'm doing. I'm just waiting for that moment to come where I'm like, okay, I'm bored. I want to do something else. Nowhere even near that. We all have a different formulation of ADHD, and then you mix 12 unique people with ADHD together. I don't know what the statistical probabilities of having a group that feels identical to another group is, but it hasn't happened yet, which for my brain is lovely, because if I was doing the same thing every time, if I was teaching the same class, I'd be bored out of my mind, without a doubt. But this isn't teaching, right? This is facilitating. It's workshopping. It's group coaching.
I agree with that experience. I feel very invested in it, and it's the novelty. It's the different. We're coaching around a lot of the same topics, the same materials, the same exercises, but the unique experience of doing it with different people. It's a different experience every time. All three of the groups that I've worked at have been very, very different, and it's a rewarding challenge. And I mentioned before, I've had different careers before, and it was the lack of novelty that eventually cycled me out of one to the other, where I feel like I've really landed on something that captures my imagination that I can invest in, because I know it's coming back to me, but it's going to be different every time. And those are the kind of work situations that I gravitate well to, where I have unique problems, novel problems that I can solve on a regular basis. It's not repetitive. And actually, that's one of the things I identified in my first coaching season, is that's the kind of work I need to do before I even imagined being a coach, is that I can't do the repetitive stuff overall. My first career after college was in in finance and banking, and I was very skilled at that job. I knew exactly how to do it, what everything meant, could handle it, but the monotony just burned me out, and I lasted 4 or 5 years. So just that, with the insight at the time, that felt oh, that didn't work out. But now I realize that was just one phase where I was gaining experience that I needed, that's carrying me forward. So yeah, folding that forward to coaching. And I'm kind of expanding on this a lot bit, because I think a lot of the people listening probably relate to what I'm describing. But yeah, coming to coaching has really it has solved that problem for me. Actually, one of our exercises is the bucket list, where we like long term and legacy planning, where we focus on the things we want to accomplish in our life. And I remember in one of my admin seasons, my goal was I want to find a career where my neurotypical traits are not a liability; they're an asset, and I can show them openly and be valued for them. And I remember during my first coaching season, I was able to pull out that sheet and put a big line check next to it, checking it off my bucket list. And I was like, that feels pretty good.
That's awesome. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That gave me goosebumps.
Yeah. That was on my bucket list too, was to become a coach.
That's awesome.
And I got to check it off too. That was so much fun. I want to share though that one of my experiences, we're talking about the novelty of the program. And, sometimes, I don't know if y'all do this, but every once in a while, because we get tired and that sort of thing. And so every once in a while you go, oh, I just wish it was a little more routine, just to, sort of get your grounding every once in a while. It's funny. I switched to doing some evening groups. Boy, that lit me up. And every group is so different. I think because I am challenged every session, not just every season or section, with the idea that most of my group members have been working all day. They're tired. If they're on meds, their meds have worn off. And so that has been one of my favorite challenges to step up to and grow as a coach.
What about that? Because when you describe it as like this favorite challenge, like why for you is that your favorite challenge? What does it do for you?
I love challenge so much that I think that is what activates me. And even though every section was different and I think I was getting novelty, but when I was doing it in the morning, for me, because I'm from the arts world, it felt like going to work, starting at 9 a.m., doing the thing. It still didn't, the people always have novelty with me, but the idea of the getting up, going to work, sitting down at 9 a.m., I started to feel like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be one of those 9-to-5ers. And I think that's what was like, seeping into my brain. And I switched to that evening, and then I get to think about all the things that are impacting me during the day before coaching. It has challenged me. It has given me some engineered urgency around things I need to get done before group shows up, which is awesome. So I think maybe it is leaning into strategies I need for my own ADHD, because I still run my own private practice. And, I do some presentation work and things like that. So there's Brian, you talked about jumping around jobs. I tend to grab little side hustles within my own scope, and I'm always doing something extra. So yeah, I don't know, that challenge of that has been, I don't know why it's a favorite. I can't explain it. I guess the high I get from it once I reach it.
I almost wonder for you that because it's like, you have to be really sort of present in this moment where your EF maybe you've expended a lot of it throughout the day. Similar for myself, when I used to do a lot of like mountain biking, like I think that was like one of the few things I could probably do unmedicated, because like if you lose focus, you hit trees. Now I have actually hit trees before, and I've had the bruises to show. I actually still have a hard like hematoma at my stomach from messing around on a half pipe when I was like 19 years old, when I had never actually been on a half pipe before. I just thought it seemed like a fun idea. But it kind of reminds me of that, where it's like the positive pressure where you have to be on. It sort of seems like it is for you, like a performance.
Well, because my whole life I've been in dance classes and done theatrical work and started teaching at 16 or 17. So it was go to school, go to dance. I'm a kinesthetic type learner and experiencer. That's been the hardest challenge, is sitting still at that time of day. But I think my brain is so used to, okay, get up, take kids to school, come home, do home things, then do your fun, creative work, going to teach and choreograph and doing theater, doing shows. That's when the, rehearsals happen and the shows happen. I think my brain just says, it's time for you to be on. And it didn't even strike me the fact that, meds are run off and I'm working off of my artistic and creative brain that really adds to, my delight in that. And so that could be a big part of it. Yeah. Yeah, like that.
How do you think you're now going into your eighth or
going into my eighth season?
And Brian, you're finishing up your third season, right? Being an actual coach.
Yeah, I'm going in my fourth season.
How would you say that what's changed about you in the way that you coach?
Oh. Let's see. I mentioned I learn from my coachees every time, and I'm more finely attuning my ability to listen. Not so much my ability to talk, but I'm fine tuning my ability to listen and feeling people out for what they need to talk about, and learning how to learning the pacing to give people the space to come out of their shell and share and be a little bit more vulnerable. It's a balancing act at times, and it can be challenging at times, but it's also very rewarding because that's what gets people into the program. That's what really creates the results. So I'm fine tuning my ability to listen and really hear and see people for what they're presenting.
I know early on, especially that first season, when I know you spent like oodles of hours preparing for each session, and I, kept kind of encouraging you to like trust yourself. Where do you think you are with that at this point?
Well, Eric and I still have a difference of opinion about the amount of preparation that's involved to get started with this, but that's okay. But as Kristin pointed out, I think Eric has a different point of view because he developed the program. He never had to learn it from scratch in 4 days. So it's a different perspective. But yeah, I that first season I was preparing a lot. I was reviewing as much material as I could, and now I do trust myself more. I still like to feel prepared. I like to come in because this is one of my ADHD things. Like if I just come in there cold, I need some structure to work around myself, and I will pivot and move in the moment and adjust and be like, oh no, we're going to go with this topic and put this table. I can move it, but like if I walk in without an agenda, then or of any kind, then it could be who knows what's going to happen. But yeah, no, I absolutely do trust myself a lot more and be like, well, whatever happens, it's going to be okay. It'll just go in an unanticipated direction. But I think I did need to learn that structure at the beginning because you have to learn the rules before you can bend them.
Right. I totally agree with that. And Kristin, what about you? How would you say you have changed?
So you stole my answer. You stole my answer asking about his trust because that was the big thing. I was like, trust myself. How many times did I avoid you, think I was going to the principal's office because there was an issue? I was crying and in tears, thinking, I don't know what I'm doing. It was imposter syndrome big time. However, it was also, I have a real high value in excellence. We finally figured out, everybody kept calling me perfectionist. I'm not a perfectionist. I'm really not. It's more about excellence in what I do. And so I, like you, Brian, I poured into not only preparing, but rewatching myself and editing and fixing. And that comes from having a dance background. If I choreographed on myself, I'd have to record it to see what I was doing. So I'm very comfortable watching myself. I'm okay with that. So trusting myself, that inner critic, it pretty much stays in the wings nowadays. I think some of the things that have helped that trust is I really had to use skills and strategies and figure out how am I going to manage the time of each one of these slides and topics and concepts, because I was more go with the moment. Go with the moment's great. However, you still need to touch on different things that is provided in the curriculum. And so I was kind of the reverse. I would do too much connection and stay in with the singular topic because that's my thing, is I get really inspired by that and we'll just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. So I tried many different strategies and I finally have found one that really helps me.
Share that. What do you use to sort of keep yourself focused?
So some of the things I did were things I learned on your podcast. I went to Goodwill store, found one of those school looking clocks, the analog clock that has the glass cover, and I what do you do? Dry erase marker and would do the segments of time around it so that I could go, oh, it's getting to the red. It's getting to the red. I got to kind of like a time timer. But for me, I was looking at the time and I was seeing it in the pie shape rather than it running out. It was getting to it. Running out creates anxiety. Noticing the hand getting to it was more about, okay, time to switch. Just that small difference.
Nuanced. And so much of the stuff that can be so helpful can be so nuanced. So
that didn't stick. I felt like I was too much going, what's happening? Even if it was right there, it was too much. So then there was this strategy of note cards for everything and putting the time when I needed to start. you kept encouraging me, use the presentation notes. I realized that I needed a lot more notes for cues for what I was talking about to start a topic. So I started using that. I still didn't put the time in it because I still felt frustrated about it. So then I started utilizing my admins more. So I did that while I was trying a new strategy. Eventually, what has happened every time before a session, I go through the slides and I think about the last season that I did, and I add time frames for each slide. I'm noticing that I'm able to chunk some down because I don't talk as much about them. Creating more clarity in how I deliver has helped that. And learning how to stop a topic. Yes, it's a transition, but it's more than just creating a bridge. Being okay with going, okay, moving on. To me, that has always felt so abrupt. And I always worry about the person who just finished talking going, oh, well, I'm not very important. What I've learned is to notice it when it's happened to me in things, in conversations, and I go, oh, well, that didn't bother me. Why am I thinking it's going to bother them?
Brian, what do you do to help move a conversation on when you're watching time and you got to move on to the next topic?
Well, one, I put the expectation out there. I say before people start talking, okay, we have about this many minutes left, and I give them an opportunity to bottom line by that way. I'm like, this is how many minutes we have, and give people, set that expectation, set a parameter, and give people an opportunity to frame the conversation, what they want to express verbally in that time frame. Just putting that tool out there at the beginning before the people start talking, and I'm treading carefully. I'm never saying, okay, you've got 30 seconds to go, but I say like, we have a limited amount of time, and that employs bottom lining, which is one of our core skills, one of the core exercises we do. Just putting the expectation and the parameter out there at the beginning really gives people an opportunity to, like, in their mind, to process like, oh, what am I going to say verbally in that amount of time? As opposed to if it's just like, okay, tell me about your point of view. We could be there for quite a while. But
I have a question for Brian. Do you feel like you bottom line fairly well? Did you have to work on that a lot or anything for yourself?
Do you mean in general in life?
Well, like for me, I feel like I'm doing double duty. I'm having to work on my own bottom lining and manage a group of people who want to share at the same time. And that's why that's been one of the hardest things for me to begin better facilitation skills around for me, because oftentimes it's me who is hijacking the conversation. So I wondered where you were since I met you after you've been through the program and everything. And you always seem so clear and concise.
Yeah, I think you and I, Kristin, have different verbal expression styles. I struggle to sometimes to express my point, and I'm going to actually mirror your point about the evening classes. I lead the early sessions, or at least in most time zones, and I have the opposite experience. That, like, I am very acutely aware of my energy management in the mornings, because it does manifest in how I express myself verbally. How I express myself verbally at 8 a.m. Pacific might be different than how I express it at 11 a.m. Pacific. So I've become acutely aware of that. So yeah, that has, like, pushed me to be a little bit more cognizant and present with my how I manage my energy and my sleep in the morning, because I know I got to be up and coach. I got to talk to people. I got to listen. I have to pivot in the moment and operate computer equipment at the same time. So I've become very acutely of my energy management in the mornings for that reason.
Hmm.
What about you, Eric, and time?
How do I manage the time?
Well,
it is funny because, like, I remember that this season when we did the whole revamp of the curriculum and updated the whole slide deck, where I was like, oh wait, I have to actually preview this stuff again. And, like, when we went from everything on Keynote, and, like, I had done it so many times that the slide was just the cue for me of where we're at, right? And I just kind of know where we're at. When we revamped the whole curriculum, I was like, oh yeah, I need to actually take time to preview before the sessions, which I think gave me a little bit more empathy, putting myself in your shoes of what it's probably like going through it, which was good. As far as managing time when, because I think probably in every single season we have at least one or two people who really struggle with bottom lining, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas, and it's like your heart goes out to them because they know it too, and yet, like, they still are having a hard time, synthesizing. So, for those particular people, what I'll sometimes do is just, right before they share, just giving them that friendly reminder of bottom lining it. Or I'll be like, all right, I'm looking forward to hearing your bottom line right now. Mm-hmm. And if they're going on, like, sometimes I'll ask permission to interrupt. And then also like asking permission, like, would it be okay to move on? Or would it be okay if you could share additional thoughts in the chat so we can move on? And I find that asking of permission, it makes it easier as a coach to not feel like you're being so abrupt in like interrupting the flow of the conversation. And, and it's funny too, because when we look at some of the feedback forums that we get from members, people actually have shared that they appreciated being like interrupted and reined in when they're talking. Or I'm like, oh God, I feel bad interrupting this person and bringing them in. And it's like, but they actually, to them and the other members, I think that helps them feel safe.
That's such a great example of the differences in our styles because I am that person, probably was in your season 24. My tendency, I just sat there and listened. I went, oh, that's right. He always asked. That was so cool. I don't ask. I pause. I go, hold up. I'm going to pause you right there. And I go, what do you think I wanted to pause about? And I try to, I do this thing we call in Adlerian play therapy, return the responsibility to the client, because I know that was a really wonderful way for me to help understand. The question would give me notice of it, and I would go, oh, he's so compassionate. That's so great. And I was still struggling with bottom lining. And so I think that sort of came out of me organically. So I do it a little different. I go ahead and give them the experience of what they are tending to do to us, because I know I'm an interrupter too. And then I go, why do you think I just paused? What just happened?
I really like that. I'll do something similar in group, not necessarily for an interruption, but if I'm engaging with someone on a particular issue, I'm like, okay, so I want you to like put my voice in your head. What do you think I'm going to ask you?
Nice. Okay, I like the way you say that. Yeah.
Because it is about giving the ownership back. Like, we always tell our members, like, even when they're asking and pleading to tell us, like, just tell me what to do. No, we're not going to tell you what to do.
Self-awareness is the first thing we have to learn. If we can't be self-aware, we can't work on how we want to change it. And so that's a big thing is, I didn't realize how much of an interrupter I was until I started doing Zoom.
And what else is another issue is that we have a coaches meeting that started 2 minutes ago, and all the coaches were right here recording this podcast.
Well, welcome everyone to our coaches meeting.
Yes, hello.
Unless we're going to invite the rest of our team into the recorded session, which I don't think we're going to do. So I think we're going to wrap this one up. And I'm looking forward to more conversations like this. I think that we're going to be able to explore different techniques, different strategies, and really explore how it is that we do what it is that we do here at ADHD reWired, and give you all a chance to get to know us more. So if any of you have ideas of stuff that you're like, hey, I would love to hear this, shoot an email to us. You can either use a form on our website or go to support@adhdrewired.com and just put roundtable in the subject line. If you have any ideas of things that you would like to hear, myself, Brian, and Kristin kind of go into in a little bit of a deeper level. So, at the very start of this, I wasn't sure if this was going to be something we were going to actually use. I think we're going to use it.
This was fun.
This was fun. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed this. All right. That is all, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Hi, everybody.
Do it again, because I was on a different screen, so it didn't actually hit record. So take two.
Okay.
I'll share. I can share what I said.
So we hit stop, and then Brian said, "Wait a minute, hit record again."
Well, we hit stop and we were having a wrap up and we said, hey, that actually went really well, because we were having a conversation before we started talking about like, what should we do? How do we frame this? And I said, how about we just coaches roundtable and then we just go with it. But then shortly before we ended, we landed on that point of like, or we were talking about learning how to trust ourselves and not have perfectionism, that perfectionism I'm getting away. And I'm like, oh, so like we just had an aha moment ourselves, the coaches realizing, hey, we didn't need to overthink how to structure this. We did just fine. We can trust ourselves to do this.
Yep. I thought for sure we needed a bigger plan. And I was like, wait, we didn't need to overthink. Mm-hmm. Brian was like, because we needed to trust ourselves, just like what we talked about.
Yeah, awesome. Just like we were talking about the advice we were giving to for others about 3 or 4 minutes ago. Like, oh, wait a minute. Duh. Let's take it for ourselves. And we have these moments. I have these moments all the time when I'm coaching.
Me too.
When I'm like, oh yeah, all this great, coaching advice that I give it to other people. I'm like, sometimes it's good to take your own advice.
But one of my favorite things, and we'll end it right with this though, is that during sessions, especially during like the latter half of the season, is maybe I'll be sharing something personally with me, and then I'll say something, and then a member will say, well, Eric, you tell us that we should maybe try to do this. Like, why don't you try to do this? Like,
Oh, yeah. Oh,
like,
I put myself on the hot seat all the time.
regularly.
I say, hey, I have an issue. Can you guys help coach me through this? I train because I'm training everyone else how to do coaching questions, how to analyze things in a different way. And I'm like, yeah, I put myself on the hot seat all the time.
All right. So this is, we had one false stop, but this one's going to be a real one. We'll catch you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
And that wraps up our first episode of 2024. Wow, that means we're actually heading into the 10th year of ADHD reWired. A huge thank you again to Brian and Kristin for taking the time to get together for our first in this series of our Coaches Roundtable. Oh, and I also want to thank Donovan Robinson, who joined me for last week's episode to close off 2023. Thank you so much for joining me from Canada. And if you want show notes from last week, this week, or of any of our episodes, go to ADHDreWired.com/podcast to find it all. Oh, and by the time this episode comes out, you should be seeing some new stuff coming out from Coach Kristin Marts from our upcoming show. Then if you want to support the show, want some bonus content, or want to listen to the podcast uninterrupted with announcements at the end, then consider becoming a patron starting at just $5 a month at ADHDreWired.com/Patreon. We even offer a monthly group coaching call for patrons at $25 a month. So if you want to snag some ADHD-friendly tips to your ADHD-related conundrum, then join us on Patreon. So then you can join us for our next Patreon-only monthly coaching call on January 23rd. That's for patrons at $25 a month or more at ADHDreWired.com/Patreon. Speaking of ADHD-related questions, if you are listening to this on the day it came out, then why not join us next week for our upcoming monthly live Q&A on Tuesday, January 9th at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Go to the website, ADHDreWired.com, and click on the Events tab at the top of the page, because the best way to join us is on Zoom, where you can interact with me and our other panelists and listeners live. Register at the website and click on the Events tab at the top of that page at ADHDreWired.com. And if you're looking for real-time accountability or weekly sessions to help keep you on track with your other New Year's goals, whether it's tidying up from the holidays, writing, getting started with or wrapping up big projects or small tasks, and just want to check in, go ahead and check out our Adult Study Hall community at adultstudyhall.com. It's free to try for the first week and only $19.99 a month after that. Otherwise, you can find everything I just mentioned, including our coaching groups that start next week, to our Facebook community, Patreon, and everything else at ADHDreWired.com. That's ADHDreWired.com. Thank you again to Brian and Kristin. A huge thank you and Happy New Year to everyone who has been a part of this journey, whether you're a longtime listener or new to the podcast, to all of our community members in all ADHD spaces, and to everyone, everywhere in between. Thank you for being a part of this. That's all for today, and we will see you next week.